Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between Michael K. Vaughan and myself, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about comic books every week. For the three of you out there that love these videos and can't do without them. And this whole thing that Mike and I have been doing for years now started off with me horning on to his own channel when he was just innocently talking about his Marvel Comic Epic collections. And I said, "Hey, I want to do that. Want to be best friends?" So, in penance for that, he gets to pick what we do. He gets to pick what we talk about every week. And there's no spreadsheet. I don't have any knowledge long ahead of time. I have knowledge just long enough ahead of time for me to gather my ducks in a row as to what that's going to be. And, well, that has led to disagreements over the years, but some of the choices that Michael K. Vaughan has made, I get the impression are him just coming to terms with his own youth. Sometimes he picks things that not only he suspects I won't like, but that he doesn't like. It's just the next thing that we're going to talk about. And that's true today. Today we are going back to the mid-1980s, when Michael K. Vaughan must have been fairly young. When DC Comics came out with a 6-part miniseries called Legends. It was conceived and plotted out to the limited extent where that applies by John Ostrander, and then it was dialogued by Len Wein. It was drawn by John Byrne, who at the time had all before him at DC Comics. He had all the power in the world. Don't be mistaken by the credits here on the masthead. It's John Byrne who was in charge of this thing. And who had been given almost free reign over what to do about re-envisioning Superman, the most famous superhero of them all, for DC Comics. And in these issues, John Byrne gets inked by Carl Kessel, who does a really good granular job. Doesn't do a lot for smoothing out Byrne's backgrounds, but then again, that's not going to be an issue. He grains things up, and would have benefited a much more attentive artist. Still, this was a fan favorite production. Fans have loved it ever since. DC continues to reprint it. And it's a 6-issue miniseries, gigantic event, right? The event of the century it starts right here. And the storyline is that Darkseid, the big, boring, amorphous hero that Jack Kirby created when he was briefly with DC Comics, Darkseid is a god from another realm. He has an obsequious fawning court of other characters. There's Granny Goodness. There's Glorious Godfrey and a whole bunch of other beings that exist in his court and toady up to him and all secretly want to shiv him if they can. And in this storyline, Darkseid has been alerted by one of his creatures, his Kirby-made creatures, Desaad, that maybe he's been going about all of his wars with Earth heroes wrong, and that maybe the thing he needs to do is not so much to go at the heroes as to go at the very idea of heroes, to go at hero worship or admiration of admirable qualities. He'll go at those qualities amongst the general population of the world in order to get them to turn on the heroes so that he doesn't have to worry about defeating them. And this causes all sorts of philosophical colloquies that he has with his minions. But he doesn't just have those philosophical colloquies with his minions. He also has somebody else. This guy, the Phantom Stranger. He's a DC Comics character. He's a terrific DC Comics character. He remains adamantly unexplained. He appears to be able to go anywhere. His abilities are whatever he needs them to be at any given moment. He is... in the decade before this miniseries was perpetrated upon the reading public, he was a member of the Justice League. He was a superhero. It was well known that although he was really mysterious and really mystical, he was a hero. He was a force for good. Not in this miniseries. In this miniseries, he is a platonic Book of Job-style dialogue partner with Darkseid, talking to him about the fact that the spirit of heroism is unquenchable, and that your plans will eventually come to nothing, but doing nothing about those plans himself. Just standing there like the Watcher in Marvel Comics. which would have, that was, the Phantom Stranger makes his appearance in issue number 2 of Legends. That would have been your indication, one of your earliest indications, that things were radically changed, that the world of DC Comics was radically changed from this first issue. But although we are talking about the miniseries Legends, where Darkseid makes trouble, he sends Glorious Godfrey to Earth as a rabble-rousing, populist, Trump-type figure with the name of G. Godfrey Gordon, or G. Gordon Godfrey, or something like that. He becomes a media sensation, riling up the people against superheroes. But before we get to this miniseries and all the stuff that it does, we have to actually get to the miniseries that started it all, and that is at the heart of this whole problem. Because this miniseries is awful on every level, macro and minor. It's awful in every level, but a lot of the ways in which it's awful are not attributable directly to it. They're attributable directly instead to another miniseries, the earlier miniseries, this thing, Crisis on Infinite Earths, which Michael K. Vaughan and I have never actually dissected. That'd be a mother of an episode. That was an episode we ought to do live together. This was a 12-issue miniseries in which the powers that be at DC Comics decided to revamp DC's 50 years of continuity. No more parallel worlds, no more alternate Earths, no more nothing like that. Instead, we're going to make one concerted timeline, and no matter how much damage we have to do to all the comics that you used to love, we're going to do that in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was not plotted, it was not planned, it was a rolling, month-by-month, increasing disaster. I had the great pleasure at the time that this was coming out to write about it under a pseudonym for editors who said, go to town, do whatever you want, go to town on it. And I did. I had a great deal of fun doing that because Crisis on Infinite Earths, I recognized even at the time when it was coming out, was a catastrophe. I on a personal level, I wanted to, in fact, did write letters to the editor of Crisis on Infinite. I had no idea if they were going to run letters. It was a mini series. None of us knew what those were. Is it going to have a letters column? I had no idea. But I wrote letters anyway, pounded out on a manual typewriter, saying, "Well, I've been reading those earlier issues. What about the 100 issues of Adventure Comics that I've read? You're saying I didn't read those, that those aren't real, that they aren't part of any kind of story. What about the build-up of some characters over that time? Like, for instance, Supergirl, who has changed quite a bit in 10 years. You're saying none of that matters anymore because you're going to kill her off in this series. You're going to kill Supergirl and the original Wonder Woman and a whole bunch of other characters. How can you be serious about this? No one was complaining about the continuity. Why are you fixing a problem that no one complained about?" Nevertheless, despite those letters, Crisis on Infinite Earths barreled forward to its conclusion. And at its conclusion, there is one DC Comics history timeline. There are no alternate universes of any kind, and a whole bunch of fundamental concepts have been changed. A whole bunch of fundamental characters have been changed. And that's just the way it's going to be. I remember when Crisis on Infinite Earths number 12 came out and the series was over, I remember just doing a mental calculation before the trade journal started doing the actual calculation. I did a mental calculation of all the stuff that had changed. Supergirl is dead. The Flash is dead. Barry Allen dies. He passes on his mantle to Kid Flash, his teenage sidekick, whose powers have been drastically limited. They've been drastically reduced in the meanwhile. So the new Flash, in that final issue of Crisis, is going to be far weaker, less powerful, slower than the original. And so on and so forth, right down the line. But the main thing, it didn't really come across in Crisis, but it was taken up right away by John Byrne's reinvention of Superman. The main thing that hit me was that Superman is not Superboy. Clark Kent never puts on a costume in Smallville. There is no Superboy. He puts on a costume as Superman for the first time, as a grown man. I saw that in Man of Steel number 1 and said, okay, wait a minute then. So it's not just all those issues of Superboy and Adventure Comics that I read and loved that you're now telling me you disavow. You don't want anything to do with them. It's also the Legion of Superheroes, who had their fundamental inspiration from looking back in time at Superboy. Only now there is no Superboy, so So, and so on and so forth, right down the line. But all that stock taking notwithstanding, Crisis on Infinite Earths came, it trampled across the universe. DC Comics was shuttered the whole while. Then it went away. And suddenly, I wasn't the only one. DC Comics fans, the only worthwhile comic book fans out there, were suddenly looking around wondering, okay, well, then what is happening here? Okay, so you had this big, huge thing happen. So what is this new continuity? What is DC Comics right now? And DC did its best to explain that. They came out with an official history of their new continuity drawn by George Perez to try and lure in the fans, but it was a mess. An absolute mess. Did the characters who had been fighting the villains in this story, did they remember a time when there were multiple Earths? Did they remember Supergirl or the original Wonder Woman or any other characters who died? Or did they not? Are they now thoroughly creatures of this continuity? It was a mess, as all these events are. Comic book companies should never fiddle with their continuity. The fans don't care, so don't do it. You are literally addressing a problem that does not exist. But DC Comics didn't care, and they barreled on, because in addition to all of the headlines that Crisis on Infinite Earths got and all the noise that it got in the industry journals, it also sold. It was a mega event that sold. It spawned, it reached into a whole bunch of other comics. It was a big, tangled mega event of a kind that now is background music in the comic world. It's so common that we don't even think about it. Once upon a time, it did not exist. And DC Comics, the powers that be at DC Comics realized, well, no matter what we do, we're going to keep doing those. We're going to keep making mega events. So they did Legends. And Legends is the first mega event after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, in a way, this is charting new territory. Only is it? Is it new territory, or are some things carrying over from before Crisis on Infinite Earths? Like I said, a mess. And into this mess steps this storyline, this plan of Darkseid's, which is to send Glorious Godfrey to Earth in a human guise in order to use his mental telepathy abilities to sway the sentiment of the crowd against superheroes. That's one thing. Another thing that happens, apparently unconnected with that, is that the folks at Star Labs are working on a fusion reactor, and they accidentally summon a 50-foot-tall demon called Brimstone, who is talking about the end of the world and being an angel of destruction. Why that happens from a fusion reaction, I have no idea. But suddenly there's a rampaging monster in the world, and that calls for superheroes. This appears to be unconnected with Darkseid's plan to throw superheroes into public disfavor. So you've got those two things going on. Brimstone, this huge unbeatable monster, is now rampaging through the countryside, through the city of, I think, Chicago, or maybe Manhattan, maybe Metropolis. But he is confronted first by a dumb DC hero that I'm sure most of you dude bros love, Firestorm, who confronts him right away. This is a neat bit. This is when John Byrne was doing this first issue. There was detail, there were backgrounds, there was all sorts of good panel arrangement, and also every once in a while a neat little visual call out. You're never going to get it. There's a visual call out on this page that you won't get unless you know the character Firestorm and the artist who made him famous. But Firestorm tries to fight this thing, and it easily defeats him. And he doesn't know what he's going to do. And the scene shifts to this new Flash, who is Kid Flash. He's wearing the Flash's costume, but he is nowhere near as fast or powerful as the Flash. He is fighting one of Batman's villains, and we can see right away he can't dodge bullets anymore. He has to swat them away using an iron pipe, because he can't run at the Flash's incredible super speeds anymore. Because the powers that be at DC Comics thought those speeds are unrealistic, they're more like magic, they make the character too godlike, we want him to have challenges, when those of you who know basic physics would know that the first challenge that Kid Flash would have here in deflecting bullets with a metal pipe would be how to stop his fingers from turning to mush at the transfer of energy. If we're going to talk physics, then we're going to talk physics. The whole point of DC characters is that they are gods trying to be human. So their powers are unbeatable. They are incredible powers. That's the whole allure of them, is that they are noble beings possessed of near infinite power. So the stories have to be cleverer. The supporting human cast become far more important. This is an attempt, yet another attempt, on the part of Len Wein and especially John Byrne, to marvel up DC Comics, which can never work well. But in addition to this, the Flash not only says that he can't travel faster than bullets, but also that he gets tired really fast. It's a good thing that he beat this guy as fast as he did, because he's exhausted. This is the brand new reality, ladies and gentlemen. Yay! Don't you want to rush out and get Flash #1? He drops the villain off at the police, and he goes to this building right here, which is Titans Tower. It's the home of the Teen Titans. Of course, Kid Flash is a founding member of the Teen Titans. He's not anymore, now that he's taken on the Flash's mantle. But he gets here in time for an exposition dump. Beast Boy, the Changeling, Gar Logan, is a teenage member of the Teen Titans. He is watching television, and this is where we see G. Gordon Godfrey on his crusade against superheroes. Changeling is watching him on television when Flash shows up. He's panting, he's sweaty. It was really hard taking on that bad guy, but he's here now and he wants to chat. And Changeling says, "Hey, just give me a second to change into someone more comfortable, and you can tell Dr. Logan all about it. If being in his human form is more comfortable, and we can assume that would be, then why was he watching TV as an ape?" No idea. In the list of problems with this miniseries, that is minor. G. Gordon Godfrey is saying the menace of so-called superheroes who live like ticking time bombs in our very midst. He says, "My point is simply this. These costume mystery men provide negative role models for our children. They emphasize violence as a solution to the world's problems. They are outmoded, maladjusted loners, outlaws working outside the system before they shut the TV off." Keep in mind, G. Gordon Godfrey has not said anything wrong so far. You're going to find that stays true in the course of this miniseries. These two rap. They talk all about this guy and problems. But G. Gordon Godfrey is giving this interview to a young journalist called Billy Batson, who hears that a gigantic monster is attacking the city and transforms into Captain Marvel. This is not the man-hating Carl Manvers character from current Marvel Comics continuity. This is the real Captain Marvel. A little boy named Billy Batson who says the magic word Shazam and transforms into Captain Marvel. An immensely powerful being who is being brought into, by main force, into DC Comics' normal continuity from Fawcett or EC continuity or whatever. He's not the only character who will be brought in and just made and put into this universe. You can see that his appearance makes G. Gordon Liddy very happy. Oh, G. Gordon Godfrey, sorry. Captain Marvel has to fight a gigantic being, Macro Man, who is smashing the city. He's 50 feet tall. And he says, unless I'm given $50 million, I will level the city. How is this character going to spend $50 million? It doesn't matter. Captain Marvel socks him and keeps socking him. He's amazed at how much power he has as Captain Marvel. He is very new to being Captain Marvel. Macro Man at one point grabs him and he says, "Not even the speed of Mercury could save me now." Why? Why can't he avoid this character? And he says, "Even the stamina of Atlas, I can't take much more of this." Why not? Why not? There are no limits to Captain Marvel's abilities, unless you're a Marvel character. So he thinks he will pull a fast one and say his magic word, and lightning strikes Macro Man and burns him to a crisp, which makes Billy Batson incredibly disillusioned. Oh my God, I have killed someone. I've taken a man's life. Oh my God, this cannot be. And in the meantime, the populace is turning against superheroes. And the Pentagon, well, superheroes can be mighty useful. So they have a program. They call in Colonel Rick Flagg, who is told that the Pentagon is reviving Task Force X. And he says, "Are you out of your cotton-picking mind?" And we get introduced to Amanda Waller. The Wall is what she's affectionately known as, a hard ass at the Pentagon who is going to assemble a force of convicts who will fight supernatural menaces, and they will have coercive measures. They'll have explosive bracelets attached to them. That sounds familiar. That is Suicide Squad. This is where it comes from. And it's a good thing that Commander Waller is called the Wall in the slang of the Pentagon, because it's the only kind of wall we're going to get. John Byrne just does not want to do his job here. He'll phone in a couple of the figures, but he doesn't want to do much in the way of details. Then we shift again to Brimstone, who of course is ransacking the whole countryside. He has beaten Firestorm easily, but he is still rampaging, and news of that spreads to another character. Totally out of left field, totally not exploited by this miniseries. Nothing is made of it. That character is Cosmic Boy, one of the founding members of the Legion of Superheroes 1,000 years in the future. It just so happens that he happens to be sojourning in the 20th century when this happens. So he naturally decides to attack Brimstone. He says, "Good God, look at the size of that thing." Cosmic Boy is not human. He's not from Earth. Why would he say good God? And he has complete control over metal. So he's an enormously powerful character, but he has no ability to defeat Brimstone. Brimstone easily defeats him. And he is barely conscious when he is told, "Need some help." And who appears on the scene? The Justice League. And you might be saying, if you're only a tangential fan of comics, you'd be saying, who are these losers? That's not the Justice League. Yeah, this was the Justice League at the time. This was the Justice League of America. They show up and they posture before they take on Brimstone. They identify themselves to Cosmic Boy. And they each identify themselves in a different way. And this is not John Ostrander. He's bad enough. This is Len Wein thinking that this is clever. That they each have a signature way of saying their names. My name's Vibe, amigo. They call me the Elongated Man. They do they? You're the only superhero with a public secret identity, so they also call you Ralph Dibny. John Jones, Martian Manhunter. I'm Vixen. I answer to Gypsy. My code name is Steel. They all use a different way to say who they are. Utterly ridiculous. This bunch of low-rent, D-level losers is the Justice League at the time that this comic was being made. And Cosmic Boy gives perhaps the understatement of the century when he says, "You're not exactly the Legion." No, you're not. Pretty much any A-list member of the Legion alone could defeat this whole batch of losers. Nevertheless, this is our Justice League. This is the Justice League, what is popularly known as the Detroit era of the Justice League. As big a bunch of losers as you're likely to find, like every comic fan out there. I was waiting for them all to die. They don't die in this miniseries, but they come close. They come close because they try to take on Brimstone and fail right away. He drops a building on them, and that's the last we see of them. The Martian Manhunter is as strong as Superman. Granted, his weakness is fire, but he has energy vision, and presumably has had a million adventures. But no, we cut from the summary execution of the loser Justice League to further recruitment of Task Force X, and then to Batman. We get John Byrne drawing Batman, always a pleasure. He and Robin foil a robbery, but the anti-superhero mind virus has taken hold, even among Gotham's finest, who don't like the fact that Batman and Robin have interfered, and neither does the crowd. The crowd is really angry. They start to manhandle little Robin. And Batman says, "Well, hold on, I'll come right over and save you," when someone throws a bottle of perfume at Batman and hits him in the eyes. Wait a minute. Oh, that burns. It wouldn't burn. In 1986, or now, it wouldn't burn. And why? Because hundreds of rabbits have had their head locked in mechanical vices and had their eyes burned out of their heads to make sure it doesn't burn. Much less burn through Batman's cowl. But nevertheless, it burns. Ow, my eyes burn. And Police Commissioner Jim Gordon says, "My men will take care of Robin. Here, you come with me into my car." The crowd is overturning the Batmobile. So they're completely out of control, but you just drive with me. And Batman very sulkily does, with his eyes still tearing over. He leaves Robin to the mercy of a bloodthirsty crowd because his eyes are hurting. It's just incredible. And we cut from there to another introduction into the DC mainstream continuity of a character who was not originally a DC character, Blue Beetle, a dumb, boring Batman clone that also encounters anti-hero sentiment, because and the way he counters it is at the point of a gun. The police have guns and shotguns pointed at him, and he just jumps away. They don't spray him to the wall with gunfire, which they could easily do. Instead, they nick him just a little, and he gets away. And we scene shift again to another character. This is Guy Gardner, who was introduced in Green Lantern's run as another Green Lantern, a guy who isn't like Hal Jordan at all. He's rough and ready. He's arrogant. And here, he just happens to be on the scene when an airplane wing explodes. The pilots say they think that it was a bird strike. Bird strike don't cause nuclear explosion levels on the wing, but Guy Gardner's right there to save this plane. A piece of superheated fuselage has been rendered yellow. That is a weakness of his ring, so it penetrates his shield and strikes him. But he still has the presence of mind to grab the plane and lower it into the middle of a freeway full of cars. Why? No idea. John Byrne is being lazy in his drawing. There are no cars on this ramp. Why doesn't he put it there? There's also ground all the way around. Instead, he lowers it onto the freeway. And the people on the freeway say, thank you, sucker, we ought to kill you. What, are you out of your mind? Parking an airplane on a freeway right in the middle of rush hour? Folks could have been killed. Keep in mind, that's all absolutely true. Guy Gardner doesn't like anything of it, so he just pushes them away and flies off. And we cut back to Titan's Tower, where suddenly Kid Flash and Changeling are helping Cosmic Boy. How did they know to help him? How did he get to Titan's Tower? And also, oh, by the way, what happened to the Justice League? He was with them when they were just buried under a pile of rubble by a gigantic superhero who's still out there. What? How did any of this happen? Why isn't he urging these two to, oh my, I'm waking up now. You don't know who I am, but for all you know, I'm a villain. Certainly I seem like Dr. Polaris, who has the ability to manipulate metal, but nevertheless, I'm going to trust that you think I'm a hero, even though I'm dressed in pink, but I want you all to come with me to help me fight this monster and see if the Justice League is still alive. Not that anybody cares if they are, but still. Does he say anything like that? No. Do they do anything like that? No. Where did they find him? Instead, we cut away again to the White House. Some of you may recognize the president. And also this guy who's going to become president. Wonks from the Reagan era will even recognize this guy. His only appearance in comic books. President Reagan is upset by the fact that the crowds don't like superheroes anymore and decides to issue an executive order restricting the movement of superheroes. A gambit that is taken up many times in later comic books. He says, I'm issuing an executive order that superheroes are not to put on their costume or do anything until we figure out what's going on. And then we cut to the final scene of this issue where the Gotham PD have finally found Robin. And he's had the pulp beaten out of him. Where Batman is nowhere around. Batman does not check to see whether or not Jim Gordon's men actually did succeed in saving the life of his young ward. Instead, we cut to Titan's Tower. Cosmic Boy is nowhere to be found. He has flown off. But Kid Flash and Changeling are still there, only now they have Sarge Steel to deal with. Another weird, secondary, stupid character from DC's military history. Not interesting at all. He tells these two, I'm sorry, the president has issued an order. You are not to leave this building or go on active duty as superheroes. And they tell him, to hell with that, we're going. And he says, you kids, I'm not kidding. I have the authority to shoot you. Okay, great. Sarge Steel has the authority to shoot them if they try to leave the building. And they do, and he's a hero, so he's not going to shoot them. What about the 50 people with guns who should be with him? Instead, he's by himself, alone, to face these two superheroes, and who knows how many others. Conveniently, the rest of the Teen Titans are not in residence. They're not in this story. We cut again to Suicide Squad, which has now been assembled, and which has a purpose. Amanda Waller wants them to fight Brimstone, because according to the president's order, they can't. Superheroes can't go out and fight this thing that is threatening to destroy Mount Rushmore and kill who knows how many people. What superhero in the DC continuity that would obey an order like that? I don't know of one. There wouldn't be one. Instead, it would be these lickspittles like Colonel Flagg or Sarge Steel who would obey an order. Not any of the other heroes would. Superman certainly wouldn't hang around in the Rose Garden while this was happening. No way. Not in a million years. And, I might point out again, the Phantom Stranger would not simply stand by and let Darkseid do this. He wouldn't talk. He's a hero. In his own right, he's a hero. But Suicide Squad fights this creature, and they appear to win. They lose one of their characters, but they appear to win, while Superman and Ronald Reagan are simply talking. And while Darkseid's minions are rejoicing because it's working. See, a parent angrily throws a Superman doll into the fire. It's working. G. Gordon Godfrey is working to turn the public against heroes. See, there's a great cover, a great John Byrne cover here. And that's the storyline that we follow here. There are still supervillains. They are still trying to rob banks and whatnot. And there are still heroes who will fight them, including this young woman in her pajamas. Oh, wait, that's Black Canary. World War II era superhero. What's she known for? Fishnet stockings. Yeah, not in this issue. No, not in this series. No, she's in her pajamas here. She fights a supervillain, and cops want to take her in. At least one does. As the plot goes on. Here we have Batman foiling a crime of the Joker's. He's working solo because Robin was beaten to a pulp and is in the hospital. And it's dumb. It's also dumb. The Joker has a hostage and says, if you don't do what I want, I'll kill my hostage. Batman takes a batarang out of the back of his belt and throws it around the building to another window, just with a flick of his wrist. It's just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. We get a group of bank robbers who are professional weightlifters. Not only are two of them enough to lift something that weighs 10 tons, this metal battering ram, but one of them is enough to crumple metal in her hands. That's not how it works. I know that a lot of the Jersey Juice boys would like to think that they weightlift long enough, they'll be able to crumple metal in their hands, but they can't. They are confronted by Guy Gardner, the arrogant Green Lantern, who is definitely up and running. He doesn't care about the president's edict. It seems like only Superman does, and there's a reason for that. Because Reagan, Superman, and obeying orders like a good soldier, would you want a jelly bean, has now entered into popular fandom at this point. So Superman is the lickspittle of Ronald Reagan. We also get the return of the Blue Beetle again. He's fighting a supervillain. He is still very boring. And we turn to a tower in Salem that has no doors and no windows, inside which broods Kent Nelson, who puts on the helmet of Naboo and becomes Dr. Fate. So at long last, we're thinking, okay, well, now I know why this is called Legends. In the continuity that we're seeing here, Billy Batson has barely ever been Captain Marvel. And the public nobody knows Blue Beetle, or seems to, and the public is perfectly willing to turn. They don't like Guy Gardner, and they appear to be willing to turn on Superman and Batman. But now that the appearance of Dr. Fate, we know what is meant by Legends. You are now going to bring in the only true legends at this time, the Justice Society of America, which fought crime during World War II. They are legends. These other heroes appear to be new. But no, you're not going to do that, because apparently there is no Justice Society and never has been. Dr. Fate is by himself. He just thinks now it's time for him to take a hand in what's going on. We cut back to G. Gordon Godfrey, who is railing against superheroes, but he's also railing against something else. I tell you, my friends, our government is failing us. The president himself has ordered all superheroes to cease their public activities, and yet still they continue, defying the very authority they profess to serve. I hear you, and I accept your mandate. A government that does not represent its people does not serve its people, and such an evil government must be overthrown. Again, Godfrey is not saying anything wrong. But notice, he's no longer talking just of convincing the populace to overthrow superheroes. He's telling them to overthrow the government. And still, the Phantom Stranger is doing nothing at all about it. He's just standing there watching. Here we get disposable minions. You kind of need disposable minions in a big miniseries. Darkseid, the boring Darkseid villain, he recruits a whole bunch of Godfrey's mind-warped civilians to run warhounds, these big metal dogs. But he also unleashes a gigantic crowd of his parademons. And that is the finale of this series. Billy Batson overcomes his crisis of doubt and becomes Captain Marvel again, and immediately realizes once he becomes Captain Marvel, he has all of Captain Marvel's superpowers, including the wisdom of Solomon, which leads him to know that the death of that giant character was not his fault, that it happened as a result of explosives planted on that character. Okay. Uh, why he couldn't have known that character was a booby trap before when he was Captain Marvel and had the wisdom of Solomon, I don't know. But now he does, so he knows he's in the clear, but it doesn't matter. The public still distrusts him. But he is being summoned. You are needed, says Dr. Fate, and summons him. All of our characters are summoned. This girl in her pajamas is summoned. Also, Guy Gardner is summoned, this Green Lantern, but not before we get a little bit of insider politics from the comic book world. Green Lantern faces off against a character who's calling himself Sunspot. He's dressed in a blue suit, a one-piece suit, and he has a brand on his hand, almost like a star brand. And it gives him huge energy powers, but they aren't as great energy powers as Guy Gardner's ring. This character says, I'm in control. I'm always in control. And he doesn't look like a comic book character. He looks like somebody. He looks almost like John Byrne is trying to draw somebody. Somebody specific who is always in control. Guy Gardner easily beats this guy. The guy says, don't you know who or what I am? I wield ultimate power. The power to create a new universe. Much like with the original appearance of Firestorm a couple of issues ago, this is an in-joke. This is Ostrander and especially Len Wein poking fun at Jim Shooter, who had created a character called Starbrand that looks exactly like this character and has a brand on his hand, and it was part of an initiative called the New Universe. Guy Gardner dispatches with this guy and then is summoned by Dr. Fate. We meet Blue Beetle, who is creeping around the neighborhood looking at young women who don't have any clothes on from way up on the top of a building. He's holding on by a drain pipe, doesn't have any wire around, his ship is 200 feet away. He sees her and then appears to commit suicide. He can't fly. Why is he diving off a building? What's going to happen to him? Dr. Fate saves him, luckily, from killing himself. Dr. Fate summons all of these characters in order to assemble them. He even summons Superman, who is still in the Oval Office. All of this. Warhounds have been released on the populace. He's still there. He's still not doing anything when Dr. Fate summons him. The cries of the people are no longer down with superheroes. They're down with the government. They assemble at the Lincoln Memorial when they are confronted by Dr. Fate and these heroes he has assembled. And just in time, too, because... here, let me slip ahead just a bit. It's just in time that they have been assembled because parademons have been summoned. So it's not just the Warhounds. It's a gigantic legion of interchangeable villains that you're going to need a lot of power to deal with. This is a lot of power, I want to point out. Dr. Fate's abilities in this new universe are not unknown, but are unknown at this point. But Dr. Fate is immensely powerful in the old DC continuity. And you have Green Lantern, a full Green Lantern. Guy Gardner might be a jerk with a bowl cut, but he can do anything that he thinks about with his ring. And you've got Superman and Captain Marvel. That's pretty much unbeatable. And this team is summoned once again. Keep in mind, the whole world is facing destruction. Darkseid is no longer playing around with people's belief in heroes. He has unleashed his parademons to destroy all life on Earth. Phantom Stranger is still standing around talking to him instead of trying to stop him. But there's one other person who wants to get involved, and that's Robin. From his hospital bed, he watches this chaos at the Lincoln Memorial and decides to get involved. One of his eyes is bandaged, one of his arms is bandaged, and one of his legs is in a cast. I ask you, BookTube, how do you put your costume on if that's true? How do you do that? You would need a buzzsaw to cut through that cast in order to put your little whiteys on, your little green shorties on. But he decides he's going to get involved. These heroes aren't going to fight without him. And then we get to the final issue, which is John Byrne. I should note, in every issue, he's devoting at least a whole page to recap panels with no detail at all. A kid could do these. It's a huge part of every issue that he's recapping what went before. When suddenly the heroes are all together, the Martian Manhunter joins them. And Superman says, is the rest of the Justice League behind you? And he says, I'm afraid not, Superman. At this moment, the Justice League no longer exists. Yeah, why not? Never explained. In these issues, never explained. What happens to them all those lame-ass characters, never explained in these issues. I can report satisfactorily to all of you, because Mike and I have already talked about the Detroit-era Justice League, that they are, one by one, systematically slaughtered, just the way the fans wanted. But it's not explained in this issue. It's just the Martian Manhunter, who joins the rest of these heroes just as the War Dogs are attacking. One of them attacks Black Canary, and she says, Flash gets her out of the way, and she says, it's impossible, nothing can move that fast. And the Flash says, the Flash can, lucky for you. Okay. So Black Canary doesn't remember that she spent the World War II fighting alongside Jay Garrick, the original Flash, doesn't remember that. Has never seen Superman in action, or Captain Marvel in action, doesn't know that super beings can move super fast. Instead, our heroes start to fight these War Dogs. Batman uses his skills and wiles to disable the human operators and bring down the device. Changeling turns into a green bird. He can't do anything about these things. I don't see why not. Why can't he turn into a giant elephant? Not just an elephant, but a 50-foot tall giant elephant. No idea. Said Gilbert Gottfried is just saying, oh, it doesn't matter if you can defeat the Warhounds because I've also got parademons. And that's when Dr. Fate says, now you see why I have summoned you. Because this is the thing you have to fight. So now you must go and do what I summoned you to do. Flash, who can run at the speed of a city taxi and gets tired really fast, not going to be any good against a parademon. Black Canary, not any good against a parademon. Changeling, not any good against he's still a bird. He's not going to be any good against a parademon. Martian Manhunter is immensely powerful. Green Lantern, any Green Lantern, is immensely powerful, and you have Superman and Captain Marvel. They're immensely powerful. They can fly off and deal with parademons. They don't particularly. They have other things to do. No plan is spoken at this moment. Dr. Fate says, go and do that voodoo that you do so well. But it turns out they all have plans of their own to do. We're just not told about them at all. And the crowd doesn't like it. They don't like that Dr. Fate is intervening. And one of the parademons grabs the helmet of Naboo off his head. So he becomes just normal Kent Nelson. And we wonder what's going to happen. While there's a bit about Suicide Squad. But really, Batman runs off not to fight parademons, but just to stop a street mugging. No idea why. No idea why he doesn't think the parademons are of paramount importance. Guy Gardner flies off, but not to fight parademons. He's going after these warhounds again. Now, we've been told over and over again, these things have human operators involved, so you can't just blast them. You have to be careful for the humans that are inside them. They're brainwashed by G. Gordon Godfrey, but they are still humans. And they all agree. But when Guy Gardner's on his own, he does this to one of them. That would certainly kill the two human operators. He just says it doesn't, but it would. but he's fighting these things when suddenly someone else gets involved. A blur of motion in this panel, but fully revealed in the next panel. Wonder Woman gets involved. She punches one of these creatures and says that man's world will come to know her as Wonder Woman. And Green Lantern swings by and sees her. It's classic John Byrne artwork. He did very much like to draw the ladies. And would go on to a short run on Wonder Woman's book himself, decades after this. But you're reading this and you're thinking, okay, well, but don't you, Green Lantern, don't you know Wonder Woman? Oh, I think we're going to have an ear-piercing siren. Wouldn't that be unusual for a video of mine? I think we are. Can I get off one more pungent observation before it drowns me out completely? No, it doesn't sound like it, because it sounds like a whole bunch of people are not getting out of the way of the ambulance. So the siren will be even louder and even more insistent for a full minute. I'll try to mark it in the show notes. It's a regular occurrence now. Yeah, no one's getting out of the way. So okay. If you're a reader of DC Comics, you might think, well, why would Green Lantern be worried? Why would he be going eep? It's Wonder Woman. Why hasn't she been involved all along? Nope. It's because in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Wonder Woman was remade from the ground up. Insultingly. In insulting ways. In the ways that Wonder Woman is always re-envisioned from the ground up. Always they are. When it's New 52 or Crisis on Infinite Earths or whatever, all the other characters get fiddled with just a bit, except Batman. Don't touch the third rail. You don't mess around with the money. So Batman's not bothered at all. Superman is given a high-profile re-envisioning by John Byrne, but it's not that different. By the time he puts on his costume and starts fighting crime in Metropolis, he's an experienced adult, not Wonder Woman. Not only is she changed from being an incredibly complex hero with a backstory as peopled with concepts and beings and heroes and villains as Superman, but she's also simplified. She's a baby. She's a child. When George Perez relaunches her book with a #1, we see Wonder Woman as a complete ingenue. I don't know anything, not only about man's world, but about my own powers. What on earth is going on here? I appear to be able to block bullets with my bracelets, but nobody's more surprised than I am. And when she gains a modicum of competence, enough to fight a warhound, what is she like? She's like Conan the Barbarian. She's reduced from being a complex figure, the complex figure that the card-carrying weirdo who created her made her to be, into just a warrior woman. She's just a warrior woman. And gradually, over 30 years after this wretched event, she is given more complexity. She's given her continuity and her nuances back, only to have them stripped away again at the New 52. Another continuity wiping event that DC did, where she ends up being, what ho, fellow warriors, well met. And also becomes just another bastard of a god, instead of being very much what her original creator wanted, which was a woman character who is not beholden to a man even for her birth. That's just thrown out the window. Instead, she becomes just a sexist sawhorse for New 52, and her wretched run on New 52 was praised by the fanboys more highly than any other New 52 abomination. Her run was praised more than any of them. They still praise it to this day. It did more fundamental violence to the character of Wonder Woman than any other reinvention the New 52 did. But they still praise it. Oh yeah, this is great. And the artwork sucked as well, but we'll talk about that down the line. This is the same thing. It's the 1980s version of the same thing. This character is incredibly powerful, but she's a child. She doesn't know anything about man's world and just doesn't want to be ogled. She says, for freedom, for victory, for a blow well struck. She's basically Conan in a bikini. And she rushes off to help with the good fight against these paradigms. Of course, Superman and Captain Marvel are functionally unbeatable. They can both travel at the speed of light. They're both infinitely powerful. Maybe not in this comic, but if you have an army of parademons, they're going to lose against Superman and Captain Marvel on their own. If the old Wonder Woman were also thrown into the picture, there's no chance. Add a Green Lantern. One Green Lantern. Apparently it's not two. Where is Hal Jordan? No idea. But we also split back to the crowds. And notice that here Kid Flash and Changeling are fighting the crowds. So is Black Canary and the Beetle and the Blue Beetle, and Batman joins in as well. And notice, I want you to see, they're not just controlling people who are mind controlled by someone else. They're biffing and bapping them. They're attacking the crowd. They are validating everything that G. Gordon Godfrey says about heroes. They're doing it outside of the crowd of control and whatever they want. They're doing whatever the heck they want. And he tells them, you must destroy them all. But he is thwarted. He's thwarted by the last thing he's expecting. Kids. Little kids. They come forward. I know what your eye is telling you, that John Byrne is just drawing miniature humans. Miniature adults. Yeah, okay. But still, very few comic artists can draw little kids. The little kids are coming forward. They're saying, oh, shucks, our heroes are great. Why are you talking them down? And as if that weren't enough to bring the crowd out of its addled senses, G. Gordon Godfrey belts one of the more annoying kids. It just belts her across the face. In this netherworld, where notice John Byrne he's doing one background per issue. He's just drawing people here. And also, apparently, the powers that be at DC Comics could not prevail upon Carl Kessel to do the backgrounds himself. Usually in a comic book, if the marquee artist is so lazy that he won't do backgrounds, the inker steps in and does the backgrounds for him. So your comic doesn't look like this. It just doesn't look like just characters floating in out of nowhere. You don't want it to look that way, so you want a little background, but instead, no. No, we don't get that. Instead, Gordon Godfrey, his hold over the people is broken, and suddenly they were out of their minds, and the people are saying, can you forgive us? And Superman says, no, your minds are being controlled. But Guy Gardner says, the hell, there isn't anything to forgive. No amount of brainwashing, no matter how potent, could do what Godfrey's did, unless the seed had already been planted. which is true, but it's not exploited. Nothing is done with it at all. Instead, Dr. Fate wants to know there's a need for a brotherhood of heroes. Though John Jones has indicated that the Justice League has disbanded, the purpose for which it was first joined is no less urgent in these dark days. What say you, my friends? Will you stand beside me in the name of justice? He makes an offer, in other words, to create a new Justice League. Keep in mind, before the Martian Manhunter showed up, he had no idea that there was a need. We're going to be two Justice Leagues? He didn't know that it had happened to the old Detroit losers. Instead, after all they've been through, all these inspiring notions that he has put in their head, after watching the children step forward to save the day, he makes an offer of, what do you say, my friends? We've defeated this evil. Will you stand with me in the cause of justice and be a new Justice League? He asks 8 people. He gets 4 refusals. He gets 4 refusals. Guy Gardner says, I don't know, I'll think about it. Changeling says, well, you don't want me. All I can do is turn into pigeons. Besides, I'm a member of the Teen Titans. The Kid Flash says, well, I'm the new Flash. I can't work out my own problems. I don't really know. Superman says, no, sorry, if you really need me, if you're on the brink of disaster, I might join you. And also Wonder Woman, for some inexplicable reason, disappears. Where'd she go? Why would she disappear? Why would she run off at this moment? Why would she do that, even in the crappy internal logic of this miniseries? Why would she disappear in that moment? She doesn't say yes, that's for sure. Instead, we get just a handful of people who do say yes. And Blue Beetle suggests that we call ourselves the Justice League. No Justice League of America, just the Justice League. And the Phantom Stranger gives us a final... But he still hasn't fought Darkseid. Darkseid is, well, I'll take my toys and go home. Apparently my invasion failed. If he's willing to send an army of parademons, why isn't he willing to send 1 million of them? Instead, he said, well, I won't do that. But even when he sends his parademons to destroy Earth, Phantom Stranger still does not oppose him. Instead, he gives us this parting montage with a quote from Ephesians, no less, about how the spirit of heroism is eternal. And he gives us all these people, and Wonder Woman is suddenly there again. But is this the new Justice League? Well, obviously not, because Wonder Woman is there, and Guy Gardner is there when he hasn't said yes, and Superman is there when he hasn't said yes, and his emblem is drawn wrong, and the Flash and the Changeling are there when they shouldn't be. And you have to go somewhere else to get the membership for this new Justice League. You're not getting it here, even though it's a mess. Dr. Fate has said, will you be a new Justice League? And half these people have said yes. Half of them have said no. No, I don't think so. You're a loser. So you're left at the end of this. That's the end of this miniseries. You're left just absolutely at 6s and 7s. What did any of this mean? Is Guy Gardner right that the people don't trust superheroes? Well, is this going to make them trust them? And is this a team now? Are we going to get a team out of this? Well, you have to go back to the crappy Crisis on Infinite Earths. At the end of this volume, we are given... that history lesson that I told you about, the history of this new history of the DC Universe, where suddenly it's the Justice Society, the real legends here, are not part of what's going on. Suddenly, Superman and Batman don't have a long history of working with Wonder Woman. Suddenly, half these characters don't recognize the others at all. And the original Justice League was these guys. Okay, well, where's Aquaman been during any of this? Where's Hawkman been during any of this? And also, where's Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern of this particular time frame? And also, so Batman doesn't mention that he's worked with these people before. He doesn't mention that this will be his, second Justice League? But it doesn't matter, because that's only the origin of the Justice League. We eventually move on in this history lesson to the new Justice League. Page after page, we go to this. And there we see Captain Marvel and the Martian Manhunter and Dr. Fate, and there's Blue Beetle, and there's Batman, and there's this chick in her pajamas who's not Black Canary. And Guy Gardner, I guess, has joined the team, but who else do we see? Who's this guy? And who's that? No idea. No idea. Totally uncoordinated with the event that actually introduces the team. So they're 2 different rosters with different people involved. No idea. So we come to the end of Legends, which is a disaster, an absolute disaster. Where is Cosmic Boy? This guy from the 30th century. Where is he? What role does he play in any of this? You have to buy his miniseries. You're not going to know otherwise. What happens to Task Force X? Are they Task Force X or are they Suicide Squad? And is that an ongoing thing? Well, it's going to be. Suicide Squad is born here. And also this Justice League, Batman, Guy Gardner, the Martian Manhunter, launches A horrible incarnation of the Justice League, just horrible. A jokey version of the Justice League with Keith Giffen, great artwork by Kevin Maguire, but where the Justice League tells jokes and is a joke, where there's nothing serious about it at all. Oh my God. And it's such a fan favorite of the Dude Bros. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Michael K. Vaughan loves that era of the Justice League, the stupid era that was born in this Legends thing. The Justice League, just for future reference, is Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, who is as fast as can be, Green Lantern, and the Martian Manhunter, and Aquaman. It's an ear-piercing siren. Okay, wait until it's over. That's what the Justice League is. It's the Magnificent Seven. It's not these losers. It's not Blue Beetle and his ship. It's not some other Green Lantern. When you introduce that team, as happened later on when the joke Justice League wore out its welcome, you get great ratings. You get fans that come back. You get people that buy the book and make it a success. If you don't have that, then you don't have that. But those things all spawned from this Legends thing. The main thing that you get here is second-rate John Byrne artwork and a whole bunch of mucking around with a continuity that is brand new. So you get to muck around with it because none of these characters have any history with each other. Black Canary has no idea that the Flash is really fast. She has never been a part of the Justice Society. The Justice Society appears to have not been around at all. The Green Lantern who's involved here is a jerk. No one likes him. No one would like him. Captain Marvel has apparently always been a part of this continuity, but Wonder Woman hasn't been. A mess. An absolute mess. Michael K. Vaughan picked it. I haven't watched his video yet, but I'm sure that he's going to have more positive things to say about it than I am, although I don't think he likes it. I don't think many people like this. He won't go as far as I will. I say Crisis. Maybe he will. Crisis should never have happened. This should never have happened. There was nothing wrong with DC's continuity. It was complicated, but fans like that. It should have stayed that way. None of these subsequent events should ever have happened. But anyway, it's all an attempt to make DC Comics into Marvel, which is always a bad idea. Not only because there was already a Marvel, but because Marvel itself was a bad idea. But anyway, that's Legends. Sorry to go on at great length, but this thing really has got under my skin for half a century. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back next weekend. Whatever Michael K. Vaughan picks, I will be doing. Thank you, BookTube.